Let me start with something interesting someone said in the comments below one of my previous videos. And it was about if the scalp oil was causing hair loss, kids would be bald before puberty. At first, it sounds logical, but it actually misses an important part of biology. Because kids don't have the same type of scalp oil as adults. Before puberty, sebum is lighter and also less reactive. But after puberty, hormones, especially DHT, changes composition and the thickness of that oil. And this is where problems usually can start. The oil becomes heavier, more inflammatory, and also more likely to mix with dead skin cells and also buildups. And what happens next is that it over time creates an oil trap around the follicles. So my point here is that it's not just the oil alone, it's a type of oil and the environment of the scalp itself that is occurring around the follicles. So now let's talk about another common argument. What about people in the past who didn't even wash their hair? Again, this is a fair point, but today's environment is completely different what it was before. So back in traditional cultures, they didn't have a high processed foods, sugary diets, and a constant exposure to the toxins that all can affect the scalp environment. Another key factor here is scalp pH. A healthy scalp sits around pH 4.5 to 5.5 and slightly acidic, and this protects the skin barrier and also keeps things in balance. But when your scalp pH becomes more alkalized, it creates a worse environment for the follicles, and it also causes more irritation, more buildups, and less oxygen reaching the follicles. And that low oxygen environment also plays in terms of mineralization over time of your follicles. So the goal here is not just to wash the hair, it is to control and improve environment so follicles can function properly. And additionally, many traditional societies use natural cleaners to wash their scalp, such as red hair powder or soap nuts and other herbal leaves. And if you want to know more and get more information about it, check step 7 in the workbook. So now let's talk about more is better approach. And some people believe that if finasteride isn't working, you just need a higher dose or switch to Dutasteride and suppress DHT even more. But here's the reality. If your DHT levels is already low and you are still losing hair, then DHT isn't itself the main problem anymore. At this point, the problem is sensitivity to DHT on your follicles. Your androgen receptors become more reactive, your scalp is inflamed, unbalanced, and follicles essentially are overresponding. Allowing DHT even more doesn't fix it. It's like turning down the volume for speakers that is already broken. So from my experience, I did use to take a large dose of finasteride to stabilize shedding and also get follicles out of mineralization. At the same time, I was also working on reducing real issues such as sensitivity to DHT and improving my scalp conditions. And over time, that allowed me to come off finasteride and still maintains my hair. So now let's talk about an alternative approach to address that oil and sebum scalps that some people suggest. And it is about application of vitamin A as example. Yes, it can reduce oil production, it doesn't fix the scalp pH, and it also can affect the sebaceous glands in a negative way. And if you use, for example, vitamin E topicals to address this problem with scalp oil and sebum that is already inflamed, has too much alkalization, you are actually damaging the skin barrier. And this eventually leads to more inflammation, not less. And inflammation, as I have spoken in previous videos, is one of the biggest drivers for hair loss progression. And same goes with caffeine shampoo. Like caffeine can have a stimulating effect on the follicles, that part is true. But if your scalp is covered with the buildups, oil, sebum, dead skin cells, calcifications, then the caffeine never will ever reach the follicles. It's like watering the plant, but there is a plastic covering the soil. Nothing gets through. That's why clearing scalp properly is important before you start with any type of growth stimulant. And additionally, caffeine shampoo often contains ingredients that can upset the scalp even more. And I did make a video last year about it, so if you haven't watched that video, definitely check it out because it goes into different ingredients that are added to a typical hair loss shampoos that could potentially affect the scalp environment and cause more problems for you. And additionally, in some of the comments, I did see some confusion about my workbook and also about my approach that I'm suggesting. And some people asked about why talk about reducing DHT sensitivity if you also use finasteride. And here's my answer. The goal is not long-term dependency, the goal is control. Think of it as a transition. When hair loss is advanced, sometimes you need to have tools to stabilize it first. That's where something like finasteride can help. But the long-term solution is to improve scalp environment and reducing sensitivity to DHT so your follicles can sustain itself. In my case, I started finasteride earlier because I had already lost a lot of the ground, and back then in 2008 there was limited information about DHT sensitivity. And later I added minoxidil. But what actually made the difference was combining those treatments with a full system, fixing scalp environment, fixing inflammation, and also addressing root causes. And this is how I moved from just slowing down hair loss to actually improving density and eventually stopping with finasteride altogether. And here's a big takeaway. Genetics plays a role, yes, but they are not a full story. Your scalp environment, things like pH, oil balance, inflammation, oxygen, is what determines how those genes express over time. You're not just dealing with the hormones, you're dealing with the system. And if you want to take a control of the system, you need to have a structured approach. Not guessing or random products, but by a step-by-step method to analyze what actually is happening in your scalp and fix it. And that is exactly what I put into Rapid Reformal Workbook. A link for the workbook is added below in video description. And it is the same framework I use to recover my hair and maintain it long-term up until now. And one last thing. Don't rely on opinions, including mine, measure things. So what I mean by it is that you need to check your scalp pH. You also need to look at your scalp under microscope and see what changes over time. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to just be guessing what you are doing. You want to understand your biology and work with it, not against it. Thanks for watching. See you guys, and see you next time.